Well, good morning, everybody. Um, you're on the East Coast. Good afternoon. Jeff Pierce here with Cerna Solutions. Very happy to do another Ask the Expert session. Today, we're going to be talking about personalizing your service portal. One of the questions I frequently get when I'm doing a service portal design workshop with clients is how can we make the portal experience personalized for the users? And the my response is always, well, the best way to do that is to know as much about the user as we can. So if you've got a CMDB with assets and things like that assigned to your users, it's pretty easy to do that. Then you can offer all kinds of personalized content depending on what type of hardware and software are allocated to that user. But um, I dare say most companies don't really have that robust of a CMDB. So what else can we do to create a personalized experience? Uh, and allowing the users to save favorite content is a good first step in that direction. That means users coming back to the portal or visiting the portal can mark knowledge articles and catalog items and whatever else you choose to be saved as favorites and then give them access to those favorites. So we'll be taking a look at a couple different ways that you can do that. So we'll be getting into some fun topics. We'll be building a couple of Angular providers, specifically a service and a directive. We'll be using some scripted REST API. We'll be using a script include and a couple of other things. So there's a lot that goes into this, so I've pre-built it all because if I were to sit here and code it all in front of you, we'd be here for several hours this morning. But we'll take a look at each one of these, and I'll explain what's happening in the code, and hopefully give you a better understanding of how you can use some of these Angular JS and or advanced ServiceNow methods to build a much better user experience for your users. All right, so first, let me just demonstrate what this looks like to the end user, so you can kind of get an idea of what we're going towards, and then we'll take a look at the code behind the scenes. So let's say a user searches. I'm going to search for laptop. All right, now you see these hearts on the side here. User, first of all, I can see this one I've already marked as a favorite because my heart is filled in there, but then the user can easily mark any item in the list as a favorite. See, I just clicked it. It saved it as a favorite. See, that just added it to my favorites menu up here. That first item, developer Mac top. And if something's not my favorite anymore, I just click it again. And now that's no longer my favorite. So see, that 6 just went down to 5. All right. So that's the gist of it. And then the user can access their favorites here. We also have a Manage My Favorites page, which going to that shows them all the items they've marked as a favorite. They can use this as a launching pad into those items. They can remove it, just like I did right here. Or I can even change the order of these. And that even changed the order right up here in my favorites menu. So, that's one of the beautiful things about Service Portal being an Angular JS based application is that you can build these really nice user experiences for the user and not have to write a million lines of code doing it. So let's jump in. Now, if you have questions as we go along, I'm going to try to leave about 10 or 15 minutes or so at the end so that we can field some of these questions. Lisa, if you're still on there, I don't know if you'd be able to monitor those or if you have a way to monitor questions from people.
Yes, I do. We can take the ones after the live YouTube chat, and then we'll, if there's some posted on the community, we'll come back and answer them, or you'll come back and answer them as you can.
Awesome.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yes, we'll try to leave about 10 minutes at the end there. All right. So let's take this piece by piece. Let's look at our search results first. So how do we get these hearts on the side? How do we get them interacting with the server, etc.? There are several moving pieces to this, so we'll just take them one by one. First, let's take a look at the directive that I used, because I don't want to, because I'm going to use this heart, this clickable heart, in a couple of different places, and we don't want to have to repeat that code in each of those widgets that we use it in. So that's an excellent candidate for using a directive. So that's a type of Angular provider. So I'm going to open up this. This is the search page widget, and I cloned it from out of the box, and I just named it My Search Page. The out of the box version is just called Search Page. And let's take a look at the directive. So now, remember, anytime you attach an Angular provider to your widgets, you have to do that on the back end as well. So if I open this up in the platform, let's close all this down. You will see down in the related list, Angular providers related list, I have a provider called Favorite Toggle. So let's open that up. So a directive is your opportunity to provide an HTML template and also some accompanying client script code, and wrap that up in a nice little package that you can put into your HTML templates. And so I'm not going to go into everything that a directive does. Actually, in the last Ask the Expert session I did, we went into a lot of detail regarding the different properties of a directive and a service. So I'll just move through a lot of this quickly. I'll just focus on what we did for the scope of what we're talking about now. All right. So starting with line 1, you see that I'm injecting something into this function. Now, what is this? This is another Angular provider that I created. It's called Portal Favorites, and that is a service type. So if you're familiar, you can create 3 different types of providers. I typically use directives and services. So this service, I'm going to open this up in this separate tab here so we can take a quick look at that. So this service allows me to create some functions that can be accessed by really any widget or another or a directive that calls it. So we'll look at this in more detail in a second. All right, so this provider, the link property of your directive allows you to provide some client script code. Think of this as the client controller of a widget, right? You can almost look at this directive as a little mini widget in itself, right? I have an HTML template, I have a client controller, but one thing we don't have is a server script. So we have to kind of make our own, do our own technique for providing server-side code to a directive. So the template, of course, you have to write it in string format to here in the client script. Angular.js also has another property called template URL. This one I have to do a lot more research for because you should be able to provide a template file, although I haven't been able to get that to work in Service Portal, so we're not going to use that. So that means we have to write our template in the form of a string, which I'm doing here. So if we look at this, this is just enough HTML to put a heart icon on the screen, right? I gave it a class so that I can throw some CSS at it. It's a link, so there's my anchor tag. I'm using the ng click directive, which is a native AngularJS directive, to call a function whenever I click on this link. And so let's take a look at what that's doing here. So it's favorites.toggle favorite item. Now, where's that living? That's living in my service that I created. So you can see my client controller. All I'm doing is creating a reference to the service, and I'm giving it the scope of scope.favorites, so I can reference any function that I've written in this service quite easily. And if we go over and take a look at that, you can see we have a function in there called toggle favorite. So when I click that link, this function is going to run. I pass to it an item object, and what I'm doing there is, first thing I do is I'm figuring out what table it came from. So I'm passing to it a type. In this situation, it's either going to be SC or KB, so that I know what table to use with it. And then I give the sysid of whatever document that I'm trying to save or delete as a favorite. Then we ask, is this item already a favorite? If so, I'm going to delete it. Otherwise, I'm going to insert it. Now, this is a part where we do have to get into whichever widget you're putting this directive into. We do have to do a little bit of server-side scripting so that we can know whether each item that's being shown is a favorite already or not. So you'll have to bear with me. We're going to kind of jump around to a lot of different places just because there are, Service Portal, even though we can do much cooler things with it, it does get complicated. But all in all, we end up writing a lot less code than we normally would. And just a note, I'm going to make all of these scripts that we look at today available in a blog post that should be published either later today or tomorrow. So you will be able to have those to reference. So if you just want to sit back and relax and kind of follow along, go ahead and do that. You'll get the code later. All right. All right, so I'm going to take a pause right now from these directives, or from these providers, and take a look at the search page widget and show you how these get included here. So this service, I'm making it a required provider for the directive, right? And I can do that here in the required providers related list of this directive. So that means this directive will always have access to the scripts in this service. Now in the widget, the only thing I have to do is attach the directive, which I just showed you previously in the widgets related list. But another thing that I've done here is we want to, so this search page widget is going to go out and get all the search results for whatever your keyword was, and then use the template to print them out. So if you go looking through the server script of the search page widget, you might be wondering, all right, well, where does each item actually get defined? And the answer is, it doesn't get defined here. I mean, it kind of does, because you'll see that it's going through the search sources that you've set up for your portal to actually find out what tables and what queries to use for searching. So to get to where each item is actually defined, so for example, sales laptop, where's the name, where's the short description and the price and all that stuff getting defined? That is in the search source. So let's go over to the search sources for the widget. I'm sorry, for the portal. Scroll down here. Now, if you don't make use of search sources, there are all kinds of fun ways that you can use search sources to make your coding easier. But let's take a look at the service catalog one first. So this is a scripted search source, which means we're not just using a condition builder to define what results to come back. It's actually all scripted out. So you can see here, the item object gets built, and for each result that comes back from that table, we're defining what the properties of that item object are. So the score, the label, primary. So I've added one thing in here, and that's this line right here. Item is favorite, because when this page loads, it would be nice to know from the get-go whether each item that comes back is already one of my favorites or not. So you can see I'm using a script include. I created one called Portal Favorites to store a lot of my reusable server-side functions. And there's a function called isFavorite, and I pass to it the table and the sysid of that item. So let's go take a quick look at that script include. We're going to come back here a few times to this script include. All right, so you can see I have several functions in here already written. We're taking a look at this one right now, isFavorite. So it gets past the table and the document. And I'm just looking up in a custom table that I made to store all these favorites. So I'm passing the user, the table, and the document to see if, like in this case, is sales laptop already a favorite? And it's just going to return true or false, depending on whether or not that's stored in my favorites table already. And just a quick note about this table. It's a very simple table. There's just 4 fields on it: the user, table, the document, and also using an order field. So we might take a look at that table in a little bit later, just so you can see it. All right, so this function, where'd that go? See, is going to set item.isFavorite to true or false. So therefore, in our directive, I can give it either the heart icon that's filled in or the heart icon that's empty, depending on whether the item is a favorite or not. So that's using the ng class directive. This one's really great for applying a dynamic class to any HTML element. So you can see I'm just using a ternary expression to essentially ask, is the item a favorite? If so, use this class. If not, use that class. So that's how, when the page loads, these hearts are already filled in or not, depending on whether it's a favorite or not. All right. So when I click on it, I'm calling favorites.toggleFavorite. Let's go back into that service. Where was that service? I had that open here. Here it is. So the toggle favorite said, oh yeah, we covered this. If it's a favorite, we're going to call the delete function. If not, insert. So these are functions that are here in my service also. If we scroll up to here, you can see I've got 2, one for insert, one for delete. And now remember, I said you don't have a server script in these Angular providers. So I'm using a scripted REST API to handle all the server actions for this. We can go and just take a quick look at that scripted REST API. So you can see what's going on there. Let's see, here it is, Portal Favorites. So you can see I have 2 resources on this, an insert and a delete. Insert simply has my glide record to create a new favorite. The delete one looks very similar. It's just deleting it. But then you'll see we have another call back out to my script include, the portal favorite script include, to reorder the favorites. So, so if I've added a new favorite, I want to add that one to the top of the list. And so I want to adjust the order of all the other ones. Or if I'm deleting, I want to remove that from the list and then adjust the order of all the favorites that came after it. So I've always got a very strict order of my favorites, starting with 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many favorites that I have. And we'll take a look at this function in just a little bit, because this gets more complicated when we're on the Manage Favorites page and I can drag them around and change the order of them. So we'll look at that in a minute here. All right, but let's go back to our service. Boy, once you get a bunch of tabs open, it's hard to remember where you were. Okay. Yeah, so that's the purpose of this service, is to provide these client-side scripts to my directive. And really the whole scope of this is really just toggling it, either inserting it or deleting it when I click on an item. So when I click on one, it's going to call that ng-click toggle favorite function. And if it wasn't a favorite, it now is through that scripted REST API. And when I click on one that is, it deletes it, and now it isn't. So you can also see an interesting thing here is this item that is favorite. I can toggle the status of that very easily from the from our service, because you can see after I call that function, whether it was delete or insert, I'm just toggling the value of item that is favorite. So if it was false, it's now true. If it was true, it's now false. And so, the great thing about your HTML templates in AngularJS is that's going to be reflected in your template right away as soon as you toggle that. So that's how I get that heart to go on and off.
Hey, Jeff, real quick.
Yes.
Goran asks, does this work with the newer search functionality using facets? Since, for example, in Knowledge Portal, it doesn't use search sources.
Okay, in that case, so your facets are going to be scripted somewhere, right? Well, actually, I guess let me back up a second. My impression is that the facets are still based on your search sources. I've taken a couple quick looks at the facets, so I can't really remember off the top of my head exactly where you do your server-side scripting for that. But the bottom line is just somewhere you're going to have to define for each item as it comes back from the server, whether it's a favorite or not. So whether that's in your search source or directly in your widget, wherever your server script is that builds your search result object or search result item object, you'll want to just do a check to see if that item is in your favorites table or not. Hopefully that answered your question. But I could have sworn, and I could be remembering this wrong, that the search facets were based on search sources. But regardless, wherever your server script is that defines your item, you can that's ideally where you would do that. Now you can also do that, post page loading. With your client script, you can just go through all of your result items and then make a call to the server, via server.get or whatever to check each item individually. But I think you're going to have some performance issues, maybe not issues, but just not as good of performance if you're doing it after the page loads. So that's one thing to keep in mind here as I show you all this stuff. This is just one way of doing it. There are, of course, going to be multiple ways of handling any of these things. And depending on how you've built your portal or exactly where you're doing this, your exact method could change. Hopefully, what you're taking away from this is just some good techniques for making use of these providers, and REST API, and the script includes, etc. To to pull all this together. Okay, so now we haven't looked at exactly how we include this directive in the template yet. So let's take a look at that. So now, right, we have our directive, we have our service, we have our scripted REST API. We've updated the search source script. So we've got everything we know. We need to know whether an item is already a favorite, and so that we have something to click on. So now to include a directive in your HTML template, it's super easy. See down here on line 30, this is all I add to my template now. So if you're not familiar with the directives, one thing I suggest is to go check out my blog post or my last Ask the Expert session around Angular provider templates, and that will tell you a lot of useful information on how to use these. But so you can see that the name of my directive is favorite toggle, and I've named it with camel case. But when I use it in my template, Angular will automatically convert that camel case to a dash delimited name. So this is how I reference that directive. And then you can see I'm using this attribute item, and I'm passing to it the item object, because this is in an ng repeat element, right? So this right here, this whole little chunk of HTML is going to be repeated for every item in my data.results. And so this item, now I can, well, this part is out of the box, right? It's pulling in the template used to print out the item from elsewhere. But you can, if you're familiar with using ng repeat in a template, you can, use it to access all kinds of, whatever you've defined in each item in your array. So in this case, we're passing to the directive the item object. And that's how, in the directive, I can make use of that item now. I have that item that I can use. So is favorite is a property of that item. When I call toggle favorite, I'm passing to that function the entire item object. Yeah, so you can see that all that functionality to save and unsave these favorites, it's not a whole lot of code. And now I can use this very easily in many different places. And so that's what we'll do now. We're going to take this same directive and use it in another widget. Which widget? Let's see here. Well, what would make sense? How about when I click on one of these, say I'm looking at the standard laptop catalog item, it would be nice for me to have the same ability to save this item as a favorite right here when I'm looking at it. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I've already made clones of all these out-of-the-box widgets. So this is just a clone of the SE catalog item widget. And all I'm going to do here is, I'm going to do two things. Well, I guess technically three. The first thing I do is I got to attach my directive to this widget, right, via the Angular providers related list of the widget. So anytime you're going to use a provider with a widget, you got to attach it via that related list. So now I'm going to figure out where the best place to put my directive is. So I want it to be up here in the header of this catalog item form. So right here inside the panel element is probably going to be the best place to do that. But before I do that, well, actually, I'll go ahead and stick that in there, and then we'll do our next steps. So favorite, toggle, and I need to pass it the scope of an item. So now, if you remember, we used the search sources to define or to add to that favorite object or the item object. In this case, we're not using search sources in the service script. We're just, you can see that the item is defined. Let's see exactly where that is. It's using the data object just to store properties about this catalog item directly in the data object. So I'm going to just right about here. It doesn't, exactly where you put it can, kind of be up to you, but this is a sensible spot right here. So I'm going to define data.item because that's what my directive is expecting to get. So I'm just going to create a simple little object, and I'm going to give it a couple properties. So sysid is data.sysid, right? Because this has already been defined right here. I'm going to give it a type. So these are all catalog items, of course, and my server, I'm sorry, my service is what's taking a look at this type and then deciding exactly what table name to pass along. And then finally, my providers are going to want to know, is this item a favorite or not already? So that's where I can call my script include favorites.is favorite. Then I pass to it table name and the sysid. Okay, so now I have this nice little item object that, where did I put that? That I can put right here. So I'm just going to refer to that now, data.item. That's that right there. Okay, so what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code, and attaching the directive to this widget. Let's save. And let's see if I got it right the first time. Now, when you're attaching directives or providers to your widget, you might have to do a hard refresh of your page to get it to show up. All right, we're not getting it. Let's debug this and see if we can figure out why. Just take another look here. So here's our favorite toggle. Actually, we can look into the source code to see if we can figure out if that is even showing up in one way or another. So let's pull this open here. Okay, so we can see that it's showing up. Oh, it is there. That is really strange. It's playing hide and seek on me. It's definitely there. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on. Why it's probably has to do with where I put it in my template. Let's change that spot here. Let's put it right here inside this element here.
And I know we were trying to wait to the end to ask questions, but I just didn't want to lose the place for where the question is being asked. Is did you attach the directive to the widget?
Yes, I did. I did that previously. There we go. So I just had it in in a bad spot. I was putting it outside of this div right here, but this, we can see this is the actual item header element. So it was so when I had it above this, was actually hiding behind that element. So you can see I just moved it inside there, and now we have it right here. Okay, so this item, it's saying it's not a favorite. Let's look at our favorites menu. Nope, we don't have standard laptop in there, so that's right. And when I click this, you see my 5 just changed to a 6, and there it is, standard laptop right at the top. All right, so let's do that again. Let's do it now for the for a catalog item. I'm sorry, a knowledge article. So let's go down and find a knowledge article. That one's already a favorite. Let's go ahead and use this one. All right, let's open this up. The widget editor. Yeah, so I had all this code ready to go. So I've already attached this directive to these widgets previously, just to save some time. All right, so now where's a good place to put it in here? If we take a look at our template, see that this space is kind of already being taken up here. So maybe in this area would be a good place to put it. So let's put it right in inside this panel body element. All right, and then we also need to define data.item here. So let's add that. Let's find where this. All right, so we can see here, this is where our T object is being defined. And up the top, you can see T is just a reference to data. So you can see here's all the properties of this article, short description, sys view count, etc. So I'm just going to go right at the bottom of this. Data.item equals, and sys ID is data.sysid. Type in this case is going to be KB, and is favorite is new portal favorites dot is favorite, and we'll pass to it the table name. And in this case, instead of data.sysid, it's going to be t.sysid. All right. All right, let's give this a save. And we'll refresh our page. All right. So let's just double check. Windows, should I upgrade to Windows 8? There it is. So that is already a favorite. And if I click it, it's no longer there. All right. So as you can see, these directives make service portaling a lot of fun, right? You can do some really advanced stuff with these directives and then include them anywhere you want in your portal with just minimum coding. So I make use of these quite a bit. There are also a lot of out-of-the-box directives that you'll find, in the out-of-the-box portals. If you were to just go to the Angular providers table, you'll see there's a lot of, there's 43 of them. Most of them are directives. Actually, are there even any out-of-the-box services? Yeah, so there's one out-of-the-box service, KB category service. These 3 right there, these are ones that I've created. So directives are used a lot more often than services. All right, so let's now let's take a look at the next things I did. Well, first of all, the heart, this has some CSS applied to it. So if we take a look at that, you can see I have the class name HT portal favorite toggle in my directive. And so I've already added a style sheet that simply says float right, font size 1.5 EM. So that's how I'm getting it to float over to the right here, just in case you were wondering. If I didn't have this CSS applied, this heart would be sitting, right above this over here. Okay, so a couple of other things that I showed you that we haven't looked at yet is the menu itself. Let's take a quick look at how I created that menu. All right. So the way I created the My Favorites menu is a lot like how the out-of-the-box requests menu section is built. So if you look for, this shouldn't be all that unfamiliar. But I'm again calling my script include to get all of my favorites. I could have defined that glide record right here in this server script for this, except that there are two places where I'm getting all of my favorites, on the Manage Favorites page and here in the menu. So I don't want to have to write that glide record twice. So therefore, I have it in my server, or my script include. And take a look at that. So there's that get favorites function. So all I'm doing is going out and getting all the favorites for the currently logged in user, and I'm ordering it by the order field, and I'm pushing it all to an array and returning that array. Therefore, right here, t.items becomes the array of all of my favorites. This stuff is just copied from the requests menu section. So we're limiting it to 30. So if you want to limit it or not, that's totally up to you. And then this right here is where you define the link that sits at the top. So if I'm in my menu here, you can see here are all my favorites, but then at the top I have a link to manage my favorites. That's what this is. And you just give it a simple href, which I'm going to a page called favorites. And then it uses unshift to put this link at the top of the list of items. Now, one more thing in here are the record watchers. So the record watcher, whenever I add or remove or reorder my favorites, I want this menu to update. So I've just defined this record watcher object. Just give the table that you want to watch and the filter that you want to apply, which is I'm just watching all records in this table where the user is the currently logged in user. Now the header widget takes care of the rest, right? Because there are other aspects to using the record watcher that you need to use to actually update your template then. And none of that's happening here because that's already part of the out-of-the-box header widget. So I don't have to do any of that there. So that's all I did to get my favorites to show up in the menu. Just created a scripted menu type or menu item, and there you have it. So now let's take a look at the Manage My Favorites page. This one is great because you could take this widget here, and this is really an ideal candidate for putting right on the home page of the portal, right? So I mean, when your users come to the portal, they're probably going to be interested in just one of a few things. Usually first off, they're looking for some kind of status of something they submitted. Maybe the next most important thing is giving them access to stuff that they've marked as favorites. So this would be a really good widget that you could put right on the home page, and of course you could style this layout to be as compact as you want or as big as you want, like I've done here. So let's take a look at this widget and see what I did. Well, just to note the features of it. So there's three things that you can do. I can either view it. So clicking on the view button will take me directly to that item. There you are. Or I can remove it with the remove button, or I can reorder it. So if I'm constantly wondering what spam is, And here in Hawaii, that could be confusion. You can reorder it, and then you'll also know when I took action on one of these, we get a nice little loading icon. Actually, not when you reorder it, but say when I remove it, see that little loading icon that shows up. So that just lets your user know that, that there is some thinking going on when they took their action, especially if you have a slow instance. Okay, so let's take a look at this widget. So at the top, this is just the header stuff. I'm just giving some instructions to the user, what this page is for and what they can do with it. Then we have the template for actually printing the items out. So let's take a look at that real quick. I could have also used a directive in this case too, created a new directive for a favorites card. I didn't. I just spelled the directive out right here. I mean, sorry, the template, and repeating item in data.items. And then I have my action buttons. So the view button, that's just taking, whatever link I defined for that item. Remove is, you can see there's actually no ng click, there's no href defined. So we'll take a look at actually how we're doing that. And did I use the link function? No, let's see here. So here's our client script. So the sorting, that's a third-party library that I'm using to handle the being able to drag and drop the items. Here, let's find where that is. Do I have that? I used a dependency to inject that library. So we'll go find this. So I created a dependency, which is just a JS include, and I'm calling this library, this JS file by URL. So that's really easy to include. So that's what allows me to drag those things around. So I'm not going to explain everything in this client script just because there's a lot specific here to that that sortable library, but we'll take a look at what we can quickly here because we're running out of time. So you can see I have this ID favorites. So that's where I'm identifying the element that has the sortable items in it. Then there are several properties to this sortable function. So on sort, meaning what happens when I drag them and change the order of them. Well, I build this little payload object. The action is sort. Here's the item that I moved. This is the new index, so the position that I moved it to. Here's the position that I moved it from. And then I'm calling server.get and passing it this payload. Let's take a look at that right here. So the action was sort. So that means this is what's going to run after server.get. And I'm calling this function from my server script, Reorder Favorites. Take a look at that really quickly. There might be a simpler way of doing this, but I couldn't really think of a simpler way. So essentially what I'm doing is, identifying the different scenarios. So in the case where I'm adding a new item, I add everything, or I move everything else down in order 1. If I'm removing an item, then I'm going to move everything that was behind it up in order. If an item was moved down in order, then I'm doing this. And if an item was moved up in order, then I'm doing this. So it's you're because we're dealing with the order field on all these other favorite records. We have to make sure we keep those in line as we're moving things around and pulling them in and out of the list. And then if they the last step is, so these functions right here update the orders of all the other favorites in my list. And then finally, we're updating the order of the item that I moved with its new index. So that's what that function is doing. Otherwise, if we're removing an item, then I just call remove favorites, which is this one right here. So I delete the item out of the list, and then I'm reordering all the other ones. Okay, let's see here. What else are we doing? So that's the sorting when I remove things. Okay, so the filter, you see I've identified a class to use to identify the filter function. And so filter function means, I mean, there's many ways you can use this, but I'm using it to identify when I remove something from the list. Right, so because I've added the class htRemove to my remove button, when that is clicked, I run this function. So the first thing I do is I pop up the loading icon, and so I'm using that just via a saving property here. So if you come back over here, where's that loading icon? Right there. So there's my loading icon. So I show it when item.saving is true. So that's what I'm doing there. So then I build my payload object that I'm going to send to the server, which has my action and the ID of the item that I'm going to remove. I call server.get, pass it the payload. So that means this is going to run right there. And I just showed you that function in the script include. And then finally, I remove that item from the items array. That's what I'm doing there. And then, of course, these properties right here just define the class of which elements are draggable. So you can see here's the element that gets repeated, ng repeat item and data.items. So I've given that element ht favorite. And then you can control the animation speed of when you drag things around. All right. So let's see, is there anything else here that I can show you? Oh, maybe if we just take a look at the CSS sheet that I used. Where is that? Provide styling on this page. You can see I'm using grid to create the columns, and that's how, like if you noticed, here, let's go and add just a couple other favorites really quickly. Add that. Let's add that. 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 Now, one thing that would have been cool to do is when you click on this heart, transform it to a spinning icon while the server is thinking, or while all your functions are happening. That because there is a little perceptible delay sometimes, of like half a second up to a second before that heart actually toggles. So that would be a good enhancement to do this that I didn't really have time to put in. Okay, so now let's go to our Manage Favorites page. So now we have 8 favorites. You can see these all print out nice and neat. And then as I remove them, well, actually, I'm going to have to get down to 3. So now that I went down to 3, you can see the layout actually changed. I'm going to remove another one. And last. So that's the beauty of using grid, display grid, rather than just regular old bootstrap columns. So if I was using bootstrap columns, they would always take up the same amount of space, no matter how many items were there.
Goran says, first of all, it's a really nice way to use favorites here, and he's gotten a lot of ideas, so he thanks you for that. But one question is, don't you need to set e.savings equal false to then remove the loading icon?
Let's take a look here. No, because the only time I'm using this is when I'm removing an item, right? So as soon as that item, as soon as we get down to here, so I've asked the server to go and delete that item now. And so then here I'm splicing it out of my array. So that element just disappears altogether. So I never really have to set it back to false. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, if I was going to do this on an item that still stayed in the list, then yeah, then I would eventually have to set saving back to false to get that icon to disappear. Yeah, good question. And actually, let's, since we have a few minutes left, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to hop over to our search page. And let's see, I'm going to challenge myself, see if we can do that little enhancement that I just mentioned really quickly. Actually, so that's going to be in the favorite toggle. So what I was saying is, maybe we'll add the spinny icon when this is loading. And actually, I've got 3 minutes left here, and I don't have enough time because I would have to kind of re-architect how I would do this. What I would do is instead set up a function like toggle icon. If I could spell that, jeez. And then have a function in my client script that would return the appropriate icon to use. So I would say, also I would need to identify in my service, once I start taking action on an item, I could set saving for that item to true, and then I would just that would allow me to return a different class here, and I would just change the heart to a spinning icon. But because I've set it up this way, there's just a few more steps I'd have to go through to do all that, and I can't really do that in 2 minutes. But that's the approach I would take for that. Yeah, so like I said, I'll take all these scripts and put them in a blog post for you, so you can reference them. But hopefully, I've shown you a fun way that you can take some of these advanced portal techniques and and build some robust enhancements into your portal that would really enhance the user experience for all of your users. All right, any other questions?
Yeah, you just asked to don't forget the blog post later with the code as well. Easier to dig through your magic. So
No problem. I will get that out. And so you can just stay tuned to portalguru.cernasolutions.com. That's where it's going to be posted to. I'll also post it out on LinkedIn. So if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, well, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, please do. I'd love to connect with you there. So that way you'll make sure to get notified whenever I post new blog posts. But I've got a lot of stuff out here. If you're interested in digging deeper into what these providers can do, there's the blog post for the last Ask the Expert session, where I give some templates and a lot of information around how you can use services, your controllers, directives, and then it even goes into modules. That's a whole other advanced topic that that you use by injecting UI scripts and creating more advanced Angular modules. So there's some good stuff out there for you.
fantastic. Well, great. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for attending. And if you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Be happy to chat with you.